Finally, the well-known American picker Frank Fritz, who was born in Iowa, died this afternoon. Frank Fritz, who you may know from the show American Pickers, used to look for lost riches all over the United States. He died suddenly of what the news called an unusual but unfortunate stroke. But when lab reports showed poison was present and the FBI got involved, things started to fall apart. He has been married to Mike Wolfe for more than 10 years. Wolfe used to cry quietly in front of the press about the death, but now he is charged with first-degree murder. After that, he doesn't fully deny the charge, which was a surprise. He instead blames a much bigger name. I'm Rick Harrison, the most famous porn star in the world. Why does this case involve Rick? Is this a planned scheme to get rid of Frank and take over a TV business worth hundreds of millions of dollars? Also, is Mike Wolfe really the killer? Or is it just a porn pushed to the edge in a power struggle that is colder than any stage drama? Do you think you know the names on TV? Not so fast. Everything will change because of what's about to happen. The strange death of Frank Fritz. Frank Fritz's death was officially announced in early 2021. At first, complications from a stroke were given as the reason. Medical records from the Iowa State Hospital show that Frank was unconscious when he arrived and was showing sudden signs like being lost and having trouble breathing. According to paramedic records, Frank was found on the floor of his kitchen unconscious for at least an hour, with an irregular heartbeat and no signs of trauma to the outside world. Often these signs point to a cerebrovascular accident. This is particularly true for someone like Frank Fritz, who had a history of being overweight, having high blood pressure and abusing alcohol. But his family and close friends quickly cast question on the story. Folks in the area were told by Frank's cousin Jeff Fritz that his health had gotten a lot better in the last 6 months of 2020. He stopped drinking, had a healthy diet and worked out. His family didn't think he would die so quickly. Mike Wolfe, who was still thought to be Frank's best friend, was the first person to post the sad news on social media at the time. Frank was an important part of American Pickers. My best brother has died. But after that, things started to go wrong. Investigators became interested in certain facts about Frank's last days. The last dinner Frank had was with Mike Wolfe and some old friends, the night before he was taken to the hospital. Longtime friend Susan T., who was there, said Frank looked tired after eating and said he felt sick and dizzy, but he insisted on going home by himself. I believe that his blood pressure might have gone down. He has had that before, but he looked worse this time. His seemingly small words turned out to be the key that changed the whole course of the case. The Iowa State Forensics Lab released its official toxicology report about 10 days after Frank's death. That's when everything started to fall apart. Using a 14-page report, forensic analysts found that Frank's blood and stomach had nearly 10 times the normal therapeutic amount of benzodiazepines and drugs that slow down the central nervous system. These drugs weren't on any of Frank's orders, and they had nothing to do with his diagnosis of stroke. It wasn't a normal death. It was an attack that was planned. A special task team was put together with help from local police after the report got to the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI). People who had been close to Frank in the last 2 weeks of his life were questioned first. These people included staff, friends, and family. Naturally, Mike Wolfe, who had been seeing Frank often and was at that last dinner, was put under close watch right away. At that point, concerning results started to show up. Investigators searched Frank's home in Davenport, Iowa, and found several medicine bottles in his personal cabinet that had been messed with or had labels that had been changed. Some of these had small amounts of the same toxins that were found in Frank's body. Even worse, forensic testing proved that Mike Wolfe's fingerprints were on 2 of those bottles. When asked, Mike said that he had helped Frank get his medications in order after hurting his back. But the date, place, and medicines didn't match up. At this point, suspicion turned into a quiet but strong charge. It didn't end there. There was more and more indirect proof. Frank's neighborhood had surveillance video that showed Mike going into Frank's house the night before the incident. That he hadn't told the cops in his first statement. Frank also sent a sound message to a close friend that showed he was very worried. Mike has been acting odd lately. He keeps telling me I need to quit the show and give him full control over how it's made. Frank told a partner of almost 15 years in a 1-minute and 40-second recording. I'm not sure when he means well. Mike Wolfe was now in the middle of a plan to kill someone. After that, Mike was officially asked to appear before a grand jury, which caused a stir in the news. That's when he changed his mind. Mike said Rick Harrison, the host of Porn Stars, was really behind everything. even though he denied having anything to do with Frank's death. So why bring Rick into it? It wasn't just happen. Rick Harrison, who you may know from the History Channel show World of Antique Auctions, did business with both Mike and Frank at the same time. Rick had backed joint branding projects between their businesses, but he never showed up in public with them. And as we'll see in the next few chapters, Rick Harrison wasn't just a stranger. He was an important part of a profit chain that could be put at risk by Frank's continued presence. We no longer need to talk about how Frank Fritz got poisoned. There is physical evidence, a motive, and a way to prove that it was a crime. While Frank's family keeps working to clear his name, the public has a very different view of these TV stars who were once very popular. Is Mike Wolfe a murderer with a cold heart, or is he just a pawn in a much bigger game? And if Rick Harrison is involved, what did he want to do? One thing is clear at the heart of it all. Frank Fritz did not have a stroke and die. He was killed, and the people found guilty were once respected across America. This case doesn't just make people not trust those nice faces on TV. It shows a hard truth. Reality TV shows show a glamorous but cruel world where even a friend could be the killer or the last person to see a carefully planned execution. Mike Wolfe from being a friend to a suspect. Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz were like two sides of the same coin on American Pickers for more than 10 years. They worked well together and couldn't be separated. Mike was the outgoing, quick-talking media face of the show, while Frank was the more grounded, detail-oriented partner who was often in charge of figuring out how much the finds were worth in terms of money and history. From 2010 to 2020, the two were a mainstay of American reality TV. They would travel around the country, from the Midwest to the Deep South, looking for old junk that had secret value. They didn't just make a popular reality show, they made a brand that millions of people love. But what really happened behind the scenes was very different from what people were told. Several members of the production crew say that problems between Frank and Mike started to show up around 2018 when Frank's health started getting worse because of his Crohn's disease and drinking. Frank started skipping shoots all the time, which made Mike do more of the work on screen. As the pressure to produce rose, so did interest in their different pay. Several people say Mike began talking with producers about changing the way the show works, ideas that are just floating around, like slowly phasing Frank out in preparation for a style with only one host. Tensions rose behind the scenes. Staff said Mike became less friendly with Frank, talked to him less, and often blamed Frank when numbers were low. All of this happened behind closed doors until Frank abruptly left the show in 2020 without giving an official reason. In public, Mike shared sad posts and talked about his feelings, but Frank kept quiet for some reason. Frank told The Sun in a short chat after he left that he didn't leave the show because I wanted to. Looking back, that comment sounds like a scary sign of what was to come. Mike Wolfe's actions after Frank's death were not like those of a friend who is sad. A few days after the funeral, he was back at the production office talking with people to talk about how to keep the show going. A worker who did not want to be named told the FBI that Mike did not cry. He only asked if the scripts for the new season were ready, and if people would be okay with the structure if Frank wasn't there. Quickly after, financial choices were made, such as renegotiating image rights for Frank and reworking ad contracts. It looked like Mike had already planned his life after his long-term partner left, but it was the digital trail that made me think something was wrong. Texts and emails from Mike Wolfe's phone and computer were taken by the FBI. Mike wrote to an editor just 48 hours before Frank went to the hospital. "It's time I take care of everything. Frank has done what he could. It's now my turn to lead." In a legal setting, those words strongly suggest planning, even though they could be read as self-motivation. Project American Pickers 2.0 was the name of another email sent to a Canadian TV producer. There was also a production plan for a new season without Frank Fritz that was connected. It was made just 10 days before Frank died. The FBI said these papers showed that the people wanted to take over the business and had a plan for how to do it. The physical proof found in Frank's home, on the other hand, turned Mike from a witness to the main suspect. Mike's prints were found on 2 bottles of pills that held the poisons that killed Frank. The fingerprints were found less than 48 hours before Frank died. Even though Mike said he had helped Frank with his medications days before, Mike's tone changed when he was questioned by the FBI a second time. He stopped saying he was completely innocent and started pointing the finger at outside forces and a more powerful person being behind the whole thing. After almost 6 hours of questioning, Mike finally gave his name. It was Rick Harrison. Harrison is the boss of porn stars and has shady business ties to both Mike and Frank. According to Mike's statement, Rick Harrison had approached him personally more than once at reality TV events with an idea to get Frank out of the picture so that American pickers and porn stars could change how they work together on brand partnerships. Rick is said to have told Mike in an email taken to court, "Mike, if you want to stay on top, don't let Frank's weakness bring down the empire you built. Do something. I have your back."